All right, hello and welcome to Low-Code Campfire. This is episode number 205 for August 1st, 2025. I've named this one All Kinds of Cash. We'll see if that makes any sense before we get done. I am Dale Warner, head of support for Plantain App, and this is an event that we do every Friday, 10 a.m. Central Time, where we get together with the Plantain App community and share what we're working on, what we're going through, maybe get some help along the way. But this is open to all skill levels, whether you just started with Plantain App or whether you've been using our tools for years. We record all of these and put them on YouTube, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/plantainapp. So you should definitely subscribe and hit the alarm bell so you know just as soon as we post these, which is usually later the same day. We run this agenda where we say hello because we're a friendly group, and then we go around the campfire with different things. We always do first call and any topics that were submitted in advance. There was one topic submitted in advance, so did a little preparation on that one. Talk about things where we've got contributions to our campfire website. This is where we have tools and tips and things that you can use as you do your development and other areas within our product. So we do all that, and then after an hour or so, we go into Afterglow. That's where we stop and stop the recording, enjoy each other for a few more minutes off the record. So do engage with us, jump in, show and tell. You can submit questions and topics in advance, either by scanning this QR code and filling in the form, or you can send an email to support@plantainapp.com. I'll try and do a little bit of preparation and be ready to present something or ask the question of the group. And with that, I will say hello to all of you. Hello, Dennis.
All one of me, huh?
All one of you, yes. I have to go through that so that people who play this back can
Yeah,
yeah, know what it is, what we do. Um, and
exactly.
Yeah. So now I put you on the spot. Is there a first call? Anything that you have going on?
Well, no, not really. I got your email yesterday
Yep.
about all the updates and everything. I just need to get with Jerry next week and see what we're going to do there to try to get everything updated.
Okay. Well, good. Yes. I would. This is referring to version 1.27, and we've got a lot of little things that we're fixing and improving, and it's recommended for everyone except who's using calendar localization. We're still working on a fix for that one. Um, it's kind of amazing when you have the number of developers and everybody working on different things. Sometimes we get ourselves into quandaries where some things are fixed and other things are broken, and we're trying to find a release that we can release that's stable. So that's um, uh, the thing that we get into there that we're working on localization for the calendar so somebody in Spain can see days that have Spanish abbreviations or months that have Spanish names versus uh, English. And it's halfway working, but halfway not. And yet we need to release that to fix some other problem. So it sometimes it's a little difficult to figure out what to release without hurting anybody. So that was kind of
I
an
totally understand.
um, just I'll just mention we're going to something. We're working hard on a new release mechanism, more patterned after some of the big boys like Microsoft. That is cumulative updates. And
Right.
what our goal with this is, instead of um, when we right now we release hot fixes to individual products, and the difficulty with that is when you pick and choose or just update the things that are relevant to you. We haven't tested that particular combination, or we may not have tested it, and so we get
Right.
into does everything always work together when we release it piecemeal? So a cumulative update will be something that um, we'll release a whole batch of changes that have been tested together, and so hopefully that'll lead us towards more stability.
Sounds good to me.
That's our goal. Okay, well, so even though Mark was not, he told me in advance that he wasn't going to be able to come, but there was he asked a question about cache tokens. Dennis, I don't happen to recall, were you in the cafe this week? Did you attend cafe?
No, I did not get to attend it.
Okay. So we talked a lot about things that have to do with performance, and one of the techniques was to use a token. Um, and let's see, maybe I can find it here. Um, so one of the things that happens all the time is that we have in a form where you want to present a drop-down list. Sometimes the list is based on SQL or things that take time to compute, and the the heavier that is, let me find. Okay, notice I have a list of users just for test data. We have name and title and ID of users. So um, when you have a form, I've got a user selection form here, and you create a drop down, like a drop down with autocomplete. Um, if you base it on a SQL query, then everyone that runs this form, or every time, everyone who visits this form, this SQL query runs. And if you have 100 people attending, going to this page, perhaps all at the same time, the SQL query still runs 100 times, even though maybe it's always returning the same data.
Right.
So we talked about if you do an items query, excuse me, an items data source, and provide it with a token, and so long as this token gives that same list of information, you can we're creating a cached token, something that um, only gets refreshed every 5 minutes or so, and the item list ends up coming out the same. Um, but because we're serving it as a cache token, it's much faster. Um, and then the
Yeah.
rest of that episode was all about demonstrating that there's a technique that we have here where you can pick a workflow that you want to test and um, enter a quantity and hit stress test, and it will um, run that number of iterations of the workflow and then with a timing. So you can demonstrate that, for example, that cache token works incredibly faster than running the same SQL um, 100 times. So that's what that was
Dale,
all.
are you talking about the campfire meeting last Friday, or are you
No,
talking about the Wednesday one?
Low-Code Cafe 2 days ago,
Low-Code. Okay, no,
Tuesday.
that's the one I missed. I
Yep.
did get some of this on last Friday's call. We discussed briefly. I remember now. You said you were going to get deeper into it on the Wednesday call.
And so we did. And just to kind of tie together this concept, if we look at that token, so the token is called stress test users cached. If we look at our tokens stress test users cached and run it, we get a list that is compatible with that dropdown. It has a name or a text and a value with a pipe symbol. And so the items list, that's exactly how it works. If you wanted to do it just with a straight up entries where it's a static list, you can have A and B, and so this would give a list of there'd be two items in the list, and they would have a visible value of A and a output value of AAA. But so we've created a list in that format with this token, and then just use the token. So it's kind of a maybe a little bit of an advanced technique that if you're thinking about how can I make my app more efficient, this is how you can do that.
I understand.
So going back to what Mark had asked about, he said Mark did attend. He liked that putting items in a cached token to make it more efficient when 100 users are hitting the form at once. So what's the equivalent technique for supplying data to an action grid? And so that was a great question, and I said I would take on answering that. So let's take a look at that. If we wanted to display that same set of users in an action grid, the normal mechanism would be that you would add, well, first of all, we have to add a grid. I'm just going to slide it off here someplace out of the way, and we'll display it. So the traditional way is you configure it with SQL. So we have a SQL select, and I got to remember what I called my entity here. SQL console can be good for investigating stuff like that. So app person is the and actually I think I have yeah, I built a query here as part of my work. So we can use this same query where we're returning text and value. So um, so we'll just steal that, and the select doesn't let you put an order by because it has it down here. Order by you will say. And the ID column is that, oh, actually we want to order by text, I guess. So we'll do that, see if we can get this configured. So let's see if that works. Great. So we add fields, and so we have two fields, text and value, and add, save, and we can take a look at this. So we've got a grid that's based on SQL, but every time somebody comes to this page, they're going to get the SQL is going to run. So the question then was, how can I do this without running the SQL every time? And my answer to Mark was you can do it through an API call. So we're going to go off into our site and go to APIs and make an API specifically for this. So we can call this I'm going to call it all users JSON. It doesn't really matter. All actually people. I'm not doing it's all people JSON. It's going to be our. I'm going to turn on the cache for 300. So this when we get an answer. Actually, I'm going to save this for until we get it right because I don't want to cache the response until we've got the good output. So we'll test that. It'll have no inputs because we're just going to return everything. We're going to do a load, excuse me, create list from SQL and use the exact same query that we had a minute ago. So we're going to get text and value. Doesn't this SQL could be anything? Doesn't matter. I'm just you know, doing the easiest thing that we have here. So we're going to run some SQL and get a result out, and the output, we're creating a list, and so this is going to be the people list, I'll name it, and then we're going to send that out to whoever calls this. And so this is an existing list we're going to send out as JSON. The list is the people list, and we'll give a 200 OK header back. So we save and test this and run it, and we get this text and value of the users. And so this is the data that we can use then to populate a listing. Again, can be any data, but this very quick technique, run a SQL and create a list from a SQL and then send it out as a JSON is a pattern you can use to quickly get that. Since I like the output, I'm going to turn on the caching for 300 seconds or 5 minutes. We'll save and close that out. When you run a SQL or get into this test, it'll give you the URL that you're going to need to call it. And actually, I want to turn this in. I'm going to make an edit to this. It's really a get. That's what our grid is going to be able to do, a get data. So we're going to turn this into a get so we don't get into confusion. So then we see that if you wanted to do it by a jQuery, it would be a get to this URL. I've got that URL on my clipboard. So now let's build a grid that does that. We'll build a new one just for fun here. So we'll add an action grid and drop it right next to our first one and configure it. So now instead of doing a SQL, we'll do a server request JSON. The URL is the one that I have on my clipboard here someplace. That one. It is, oh, see, I do have a choice. It could have been a get or a post, but I have to pick. So it's consistent. This is expecting a get. I'm doing a get. I'm not having to send anything with this because it doesn't expect any parameters, so I don't have to send any parameters. Now, the ID property, this I'm trying to remember. We'll see. We'll find if we'll determine how to do this. But this is going back to saving and testing this thing. This is returning text and value. I think what I need to put here is value. We'll see shortly. So it's value. And by the way, anytime you get working with JSON, it often gets very case sensitive. So I want to make sure that I want to get this exactly the way it's specified here. So value. You have to provide a base name, and it doesn't really matter what it is, and I'm going to call it P for people. Um, you can get down lower into the JSON if there's um, arrays deeper inside. We're not going to have to do that, or pivot data. We're not going to do that. We don't want we don't need to send any headers. So hopefully this will do what we need to do. And so now we have add fields, and we see our prefix p text, p value. We can just select those and add them. And I don't really like the p showing up, so I'm going to get rid of that in the title, but otherwise this listing is going to act just like any other listing that we have. So now this one on the left is based on the API call, and the API call is cached. So when somebody comes to the page, this listing, the first person in is going to, I mean, everyone calls this API. The API responds the first time by doing whatever the actions are here, and then caching the response uh, due to this selection. The second and third and fourth person, who however many times this page gets hit until the 300 seconds expire, the actions don't run, but rather the answers are in cache, and so it just returns the cached value um, to this listing, and so it will be incredibly fast.
And so every 5 minutes, the data would be updated in the cache, correct?
Yes. And so this is one of those things that you have to consider what your tolerance for caching is, right, as a developer. If you're talking about a user list and you never, once in a week you get a new user or take a user off, a 5 second cache would be, or excuse me, a 5 minute cache is more than acceptable. It could be much longer.
Dale, I have a question or
Yes.
kind of
Hello,
a
Matt.
clarification. Hi there. Um, so Dennis asked basically every 5 minutes that would be refreshed.
The
That
cache
is
gets cleared.
all right. So that after 5 minutes and 1 second, if I come in, I don't have a cache. I'm going to be the first in, and then that reloads the cache and starts the clock again.
Yes.
Okay. So it doesn't essentially renew and refresh automatically.
Right. If nobody's coming to your page, then for a day, then
Yeah.
this isn't getting generated. The
Okay.
first time somebody does, then it's there. So
Hmm.
yeah,
So let's say in a different scenario, you didn't want the first person in to have to wait. You've got a huge data set or whatever.
yeah,
Um, could you do something like a scheduled task your cache is 5 minutes and you do a task that says, go run this query and cache this every 5 minutes?
yeah. You can call your own API, absolutely.
Okay. Hmm.
And another, um, so let's go with the user scenario. Let's say our users change very infrequently. So another approach to this would be that we could set this to the whatever the number of seconds that means a day, right? So very, very long cache time. Um, the suggestion that you just had, you could have a job that runs once a day that builds that, and so now everyone who's hitting the page is always getting it from cache. The
Hmm.
the negative of that is that if um, if you do get a new user, they're not going to show up on the list, or a new person in this case.
Mhm.
Um, and so you as the developer can know that. And there is, and we touched on this a little bit last week, but there is in our list of actions the clear cache item action. Gives you some choices. You can clear all cache, or you can pick a particular cache key. So if you happen to know the cache key that's related to your API, and that can be a little bit difficult um, to find, but you can specify it here. That cache, even though it's scheduled to last for 24 hours, if you give it the cache key, it goes away, and so now the next person gets the fresh data. So you could build into your add user logic to clear the cache after you get a new user.
Hmm.
So when that event happens, when you need to, I mean, you can expire the cache according to when you need to. Um,
And that's only available in a workflow? Oh no.
no, it's an action that's available wherever.
Yeah, clear cache item. Okay.
And so if you design it that I mean, just worst case, simple design, you could go with clear all cache, right? So on anything that you know that you're relying, that you want the cache to refresh, you could just do the clear all cache. Anything that, uh, I mean, everything that's cached is now gone, and so the next call to it is going to trigger a refresh of that thing. So you can you could have a force refresh functionality um, on a variety of events and not really get into fine-grained clearing. That might suit your scenario, or you might want to do particular items.
So in my case, just one use case might be I've got a list of projects which change infrequently, but it does change.
Right.
And what I then could do is create this cache mechanism using, say, an API. And then if there's an add or a material change, find the cache key, clear that cache, and then I'd call the API again to rerun the cache.
Yes, you can
Okay,
do all.
that's very cool.
And this gets more and more significant on long-running queries, and I'm pretty sure you have some of those.
Oh, yes, I do.
A- And so if you start thinking about, find your worst offender and work on the, get that going, and then, build out from there. But a couple things that are quite important and good news with this. Um, the two things that you can cache are APIs um, and tokens. When and caching is based on a signature. So, um, we skipped past this earlier. I'm doing this thing and I'm not providing any input parameters. But if there were an input parameter, and this is probably more often the case, it's not just a list of users or a list of projects, but I think about a user who has gone into a project and now they have a sub view of project elements. I don't know what you have, but let's say
Correct.
they're project
Yep.
elements.
Yep.
Uh, and it's the same scenario that they're going to come back and forth to that page many times in the session that they're doing, but the element list isn't going to change or changes infrequently.
Hmm.
When you have an input to an API like this element ID, so now your API call says, get me my list of elements for element ID number 375 or whatever they're
Yep.
actually it would probably be for project ID.
Yep.
So
Correct.
get me the elements for project ID 5. The cache for this API is based on all of the input parameters. That's the signature. And so the call for project 5 is cached. If somebody comes in for project 6, it doesn't disturb the cache for project 5, but it's going to have to run for project 5 or project 6 rather,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
um, the okay, that's the long version. The short version is APIs are cached separately based on the signature. So if you call it the same, if you call it the same way, you're going to get the cached version. And if you call it with a different set of inputs, you're going to get a different cached version, or it will run the API. So this is good news for you, right? If you have two different people running, somebody's in project 5, somebody's in project 6, the first person that hits project 5 is going to get the elements for project 5. If you have two people in for project 5, now they're sharing that. So whether it's the case that the user keeps coming back to the same screen, but it's faster the second time and third time, or two users in the same place, in the same project are going to, whoever One of them is going to have to wait for the answer, and the other one is going to get the cached version. So it's going to ultimately be faster and less drain on whatever resources, right? If you're doing heavy duty SQL and you see a spike to 75% when this query runs, now it's going to be negligible that second time. So overall, the load is lighter.
So the caching that you're this kind of a partitioning of caches, if you would, is based on input parameters,
Yes.
right? So if I say go fetch project ID 5, it builds a cache for 5. Similarly for 6. But if I say build a cache for all the projects for this client, and I go by client ID, obviously every client has their own cache.
Yes.
And then I can back it up even further and just say, go build a cache for all the projects and let me do the filtering at the grid level.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. Hmm.
So in the same way, when you do tokens are also cached. And, let's see what we have here. So I'm gonna, gonna create a token here that has a definition, constant token. So when I do, when you have input parameters to a, oh, I need to turn on evaluate tokens here. Um, so before we go on, well, not even before we go on, this is kind of an interesting thing that illustrates a little bit. Um, First of all, this illustrates that you turn on caching for a token, whatever the token does. If the token does a database token, heavy duty query that runs, the output still gets cached, and so you can save on tokens. In my case, I did a simple constant token that but the signature, the token params cafe, this is the signature of the call. And so anybody that calls this exact same token with this signature is going to get the cached version if it exists. This is an illustration that caching is in effect because I did this and ran it and I had forgotten to pick the evaluate tokens. And so the first time that I called with this particular signature, it didn't evaluate the token, and that token and but it still got cached. It didn't do as a developer, it didn't do what I wanted it to do, but it did what I asked. It returned a token, and it is being cached. And when I run it, it's returning it out of cache until the cache expires.
I see. Yep.
So when that cache expires, or when we clear it, uh, that's when it's going to get a new value. All right.
We'll come back in 3 minutes and make sure you're right.
Well, we're not going to wait that long. So I don't know if you were here last week. I think you were, but
Yes.
we dealt with the cache utility. So there's these cache tools. I got a little flyer running around here. If I show the cache details, Uh, oh, maybe it's already cleared. Maybe I've talked long enough. Let's see if I'm, where are we? Oh, I'm on a different site anyway. Never mind. So now, yes, I was thinking we were on Campfire. We're on a different site. So let's do it this way. We'll duplicate this page. I'm going to um, use the persona bars method to clear cache. And so now when I run this, it
Mhm.
refreshes, and now it's cached.
Mm.
So illustration, I could have also created that workflow and used a clear cache, um, the clear cache item action, and it would have done it. Any of those would, but um, that's what clear cache does, right? Just kind of good illustration of what clear cache does.
So in the case of back to the action to clear the cache, you've got
Mhm.
three choices: clear all, clear tabs, or clear portal. If, all right, to clarify, one, you're saying that if I have one token that accepts token parameters and it's cached, that builds a cache per token parameter.
Um, okay, let me explain these as I understand them. In just a second, we'll get all of them in here. So there's two clearing actions. I have never used this one, but it says that when you have things cached at a user level, this is the thing you can pick for a user and clear their cache. So this has to do with in uh, this one. When we cache, there's a layer. You can do it globally or by user or role or user session. And so if you're caching per user, which is, a particular strategy, then this is the thing that is going to let you clear out just that user's cache. So
Mhm.
if the user has done something that you want them to they've invalidated the cache and that they want a different list based on what you've done, you can just say you can clear it there. And then, so now back to your question, clear all cache is everything, and you saw me do it. It says, it's the same thing
Yeah,
as persona bar.
yeah.
Uh, tabs cache. This is uh, um, pages can be cached too, and this I haven't had a lot. Hmm, uh, it can be a dangerous. Well, let's see where pages are. Let's look at that. Uh, go find a page here. Doesn't matter what page. There is a page settings, advanced. The the page can be set to caching,
Mhm.
and some of these settings don't work well with our modules. And yet, you can cache an entire page and make the page run faster. And if you've done that, that's in DNN terminology, tabs are pages, pages are tabs. And so I think this has to do with clearing for a particular page. And then if you have multiple portals on your system, this would be clearing for a particular portal. So I don't know how much value you're going to get out of caching at these levels. Um, but um,
So hypothetically,
mhm.
in a case where you have again, go back to the project metaphor. You've got one project which has got several pages. You've got, pages to manage users, pages to manage project-related items, things like that. Theoretically, if I were to cache those pages, because in my case, people bounce from one to the other, I, again, theoretically improve response time on the second iteration, the second time into that page.
Yes. And I would just,
Caution me.
yes, I, I think, so my concern would be if you cache a page and it has a action grid on it that's showing content. I think that what you'll find is that the action grid is essentially not running at all well, on the second hit. So
Yeah,
you might be displaying something, but didn't actually invoke the action grid, which may run very fast, but if somebody tries to interact with it, it might not run. So I would just crawl if you're going to go, in the crawl, walk, run, go very slowly. Don't change your whole site, and then find some way to measure that the cache is actually doing what you expect. So, for example, you might display some known value that um, you can tell when it changes that the cache, like for example, a date and time,
yeah,
right? That you can see that the page is behind current time because you can look at that date and time.
yeah, yeah.
And so you know that you're seeing cached values versus real values. And anyway, if it were me, I would spend more focus on the the ele the elements like the listing I you know, the listing data at the data level versus at the page level. But
Right,
you
right.
might find a valid case for it and be able to make it work for you. I haven't done it.
Now back to the cache key. How do you find the cache key? And that's like, for instance, you said build the API to create the list and so on and so forth and cache that. I think what you're saying is in order to essentially kill that cache, I need the cache key for that API.
Yes, and so now we've bumped up against the level of things that I know and things that I don't. In our cache tools that I created, and we talked about a little bit last week, let's work with this a second. So we're going to create 10 things in cache that are 100 characters long. And if I show the cache summary, we see 10 items and my estimate of how much bytes that takes up. Um, if I say show cache details, we see keys and size. So if you wanted to get rid of this particular, and there isn't I haven't found a great correspondence uh, um, between, I can't tell you how this cache key is built. So knowing how to delete it is, I mean, knowing which cache key goes to which item is a little bit of a mystery to me.
Okay.
But this is a cache key that you could clear using the action we were just looking at. And so um, you can dig into how I'm creating these, and let's go take a look. This is all what you're seeing here is done with Razor, and not that hard to uh, understand, but we'll take a look at it. So this is let's look show cache summary or show cache details. Let's look at the button. Show cache details. Hmm. is it's running cache tools show cache as a token. So that's the token that's the Razor token that knows how to do that. And so if we look at cache tools, show cache, and run it, we're getting this table of what's in the cache. So if we were to edit it, you can see what it is that it's looking at. So we're accepting some token parameters, and then it's looping through the every cache item in system web runtime cache. So this is the cache that we're looking at, and so potentially you could investigate down here and figure out what key goes with what. Um, you can back into it too. So if we show all the details, and let's do some population again. So we'll create one item in cache. My sum right now, we have one item in cache. If we run it with the show details true, it will show you the values as well. So you can back into it. I put something in this and I know what the value is.
Yeah.
So therefore, the cache key that I want for that thing is this.
Hmm.
So, and I think that they'll be created when you're talking about a token cache key, that they're very consistent. So if you create it with a particular signature, this the 97 part is the ID of the token that generated it, the number of the token that generated it,
Yeah.
and then this part of it is, oops, sorry for the
Okay.
is the signature um, is of the thing is turned into a key. So all the rest of this is very static, and then this is for the particular signature of the item in question. And so I think if you're generating a particular item and you determine, and you determine it once, you'll know what the right signature is to be able to clear the key. But I don't know how to exactly find, hey, I'm doing this token, what is its key?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can iterate through them too, right? So if you put a value in it, you can, um, if you know what value you're looking for, you can clear it. That's, I don't know. Wish I had a better answer than that. And then the other thing I've discovered, again, all the things, there's a big list of things that I don't know. This is where the global um, token caching occurs. But um, other ones like user session or API tokens don't show up in this list. So there's other places that you would have to iterate through to find other cache, and I don't know where that is. But at least it's a
So,
place to start. Wow. So when Mark plays this in replay, we showed that we can display using an API to fill up a listing using JSON, and you can cache it and you can get performance improvements out of that. Other great suggestions happened as well. Um, I wanted to point out that, where are we here? So I said there's only two things that you can cache. So it's APIs have a cache setting, tokens have a cache settings, and then there is no cache settings on a workflow. So if a workflow has the same inputs, every time you run it, it's going to do the work and give you an output. I think we're talking about adding a cache setting to workflows, but I'll just call out and remember that you can create a token that runs a workflow, and so long as you consume the token can be cached. So if you get a if you can get a value out of a workflow using a token, you can cache that and prevent the workflow from running over and over again to do the same thing. Okay, so there's effectively 3 areas that can be cached. Nice. Um, Going on a little bit, I wanted to ask a question. Um, this is a product team question. We would like to remove the else part. What am I talking about? There's a thing in our product that has, so you're doing a token, and then you've got a format. So, and then I didn't even know until they asked me this question that else part exists. So you've got a pipe to get to the format, and then another pipe to get to else part. Did anybody even know this exists? Anybody ever use it?
It sounded like something out of The Lord of the Rings. Else? No.
Well, we're um, we're thinking that this is something that I mean, from my testing, I don't think it has a practical use. The best that I could come up with is that um, you could use it to tell if a query string didn't have a parameter listed, right? So uh, if you're testing a query string for the existence of the debug flag, for example, get colon debug, um, you could tell if you test to see if it's you could test to see if it's blank, but that doesn't really tell you whether or not the query string has it on there in the first place. This could be used to say the query string doesn't even have that. It's not blank. It's not true. It's not false. It's not there. And it seems like a very limited value. And I think what's going on is that they are uh, working on the token engine as a whole and improving it, and they don't want to support stuff we're not using. So
Is that different than the initialization code where you put like equals or if
it
it
is
comes
different.
back
Yeah,
null?
we're not going to touch the providing a default value. That so that you're right. This is actually, this equals def is in there, so you can set a default value, and this doesn't change that. All right. Well, if anybody is watching this in replay and has a strong case for this, please let us know. So that's that one. IT. So we talked about, we did low code high performance a couple of days ago. I mentioned this last week. We're still not going to have time to get to it, but there's this other very efficient pattern, autocomplete text box with autocomplete URL. So instead, if you have a drop down that has 1,000 entries, that rather than loading up your page with 1,000 entries, you start typing in the box and it goes out and does the API call and gets just a few that match. And so it's another efficiency pattern, and I want to make a contribution out of it, but we'll do it together sometime when we have a few minutes. I'll mention our Kanban progress. Um, since last time, I think the calendar view localization, we were it was in review and now it's gone back to development, so it needed more work. Uh, there's this other feature that's in development is if we have this enable field tooltip functionality that was broken in Bootstrap 5, and so that I'm sure is going to be fixed by next week. The things that are listed here were done. They were already done last week when we talked. So we have some things being worked on, some things in the queue, several more things in the queue being ready, but that's progress there. We are just a few minutes away. There was a few of you that arrived after we did the first call. Did anybody have something they want to talk about before I just talk about other stuff?
I had
No.
sent you an email, Dale, about trying to use the hierarchy view in a grid, and I couldn't find the right way to structure a query to make it work.
Aha. So I'm going to give the cheating answer here. If you do you have a 127 version someplace?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I think this is a hierarchy view in the files, and also in SQL console, this is a hierarchy view, and so those two examples exist on every 127 system, and in SQL view even earlier. So those pages exist under configuration. The SQL console exists here. And so if we were to go and edit that page, you could open it up and see how we did it. So manage grid. So the data source for that is, I mean, it's a little bit ugly, but you could run that SQL, maybe even in a SQL query, and see what it returns, and then kind of get an understanding of what needs to be built to make that work.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
I was figuring it had to be something like that. Ugly.
yeah. And let's see. I wonder if I've done anything with that here on Campfire. Yes.
I did not search Campfire.
So here's a view and here's a hierarchy view of the same thing. This is probably a more simplified. So I would look at this one. And I'll put it on the chat. And we've got the expand all and collapse all. So that's a nice, and let's see what it looks like. That's the sales drill down. And I turned on both views on that so you can see the data that's behind it as well as the hierarchy view.
Okay.
So that gives probably a pretty good clue. So good. All right. Sorry I didn't see your email.
That's okay. When you make it that far into your inbox now, you can delete it.
That is my problem. Okay. Yep, so we have no new campfire contributions. Um, New documentation. We have this. Uh, there's always been, or a long time been, connectors in the interface, and we now have actions that allow you to add and delete and test and update connectors. And so that's now documented. Um, so this would be like if you wanted to dynamically add an SMTP connector and test to make sure it works. If you have many clients and each with their own different SMTP, you could create an SMTP connector for each client and know that it's working when you set it up for them and then use it. So and then delete it when the client goes away. That would be a use case for that. I think the rest of this we'll talk about another day. All right, it's the hour is done. We're about to go into Afterglow, so hang with us if you like. thank you for spending your hour with us. And Mark, hope you had a good time being away from us. Patrick as well. And we will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.